Hey, good to see you back. Fair warning, these stories get under your skin. Real people, real situations, and no clean endings. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing, and let's get started. I work from home, and my neighbor is outside every time I am. I pulled the doorbell footage and realized something was seriously wrong. The feeling starts as a whisper, but soon the evidence becomes undeniable. I, 28-year-old female, work from home and have for about 2 years now. Mostly calls and administrative work. Just me in my office. About 3 weeks ago, I started noticing something weird. Every time I stepped outside, coffee on the porch, a walk, getting the mail, my neighbor was there, the one 2 doors down. Always in a different spot, but always facing my house. At first I thought coincidence, but it happened every single time. Afternoon break, she's there. I go to call on my porch, she's watering plants facing me. I leave for a walk, she's getting her trash cans. Every single time. I work from home on a regular schedule, but this was too precise. After 2 weeks of tracking it, mentally, I decided to check my doorbell footage. I went through 3 weeks of recordings and timed every appearance. Every coffee break, every porch step, every moment outside, documented nearby in sightline of my house. Not once random, not a single coincidence. Documented to the minute. Someone was paying her to watch me. And that's where the real dread sets in. The first thing I did was pull the doorbell footage. I had to be sure. And as I scrolled through 3 weeks of video, I realized I wasn't paranoid. I was right. I spent 3 hours cataloging it. Every single time I was home, she was there. Not in a vague way, I mean precise. I work from home. I'm at my desk by 8 a.m. She was outside by 8:15, standing in her driveway, facing my house. Same spot, same direction. Every single morning. When I took a coffee break at 10:30, she showed up at 10:35. 11:15 break? There she was by 11:20. Afternoon walk at 3 p.m.? She was out on the mailbox trip at 3:05, standing perpendicular to her door so she could watch my porch. I watched her do this for 3 weeks straight. Never varied, never missed. The timestamps were undeniable. The positioning never changed. This wasn't a neighbor watering plants or checking mail. This was scheduled, calculated, methodical. She was standing outside my house on purpose, recording my routine, documenting when I left and when I came back, watching for patterns in my life. And the worst part? She never looked away. Not once. Even when I clearly saw her on camera, her eyes locked on my front door. I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. This was deliberate. This was relentless. And as I sat there cataloging every single instance, one thought wouldn't leave me alone. Someone had told her to do this. Someone had hired her. Someone had a plan, and I was the target. And when I posted the footage analysis, the comments immediately started connecting dots I hadn't put together yet. Multiple watchers? That's not a breakup obsession, that's a coordinated operation. Has your lawyer looked at his phone records for communications with the others? The worst part was realizing they might be right. This wasn't about one person. This was organized. This was deliberate. And I was about to discover how organized it really was. What I didn't know was that the surveillance went back much further than 3 weeks. And that it wasn't just one neighbor. It was multiple, coordinated, watching from different angles. And the person behind it all had been planning this for a very long time. So the real work starts. Verification mode. Trying to convince yourself it's coincidence, but the footage tells a different story. I spent the weekend going through doorbell footage, frame by frame, trying to find anything that made logical sense. Maybe she was just a neighbor and I was paranoid. I pulled up days where I'd deliberately broken my routine, worked late instead of my usual 3 p.m. porch coffee, skipped my afternoon walk, and she still showed up. Different times, but always there. By Monday, I was convinced this was someone who knew my schedule better than I did. I'd be at my desk with curtains drawn, completely invisible from the street, and I'd hear her out there. Footsteps, fence creaking, positioning herself for a clear line to my porch. I started testing it. I'd open my blinds for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Within an hour, she'd shift closer, adjust her angle. That's when it broke me. Working from home was supposed to be freedom. Now it felt like living in an observation post. Every moment I was visible, documented, probably sold to whoever hired her. By Tuesday night, one name kept surfacing. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. Someone I'd thought was done with me. And the comments came in hot on this one. "I'm so angry for you. The violation of having your own home become an observation post. Please tell me the police took this seriously." 6 weeks of footage plus 3 paid neighbors plus your ex coordinating it all equals federal stalking and harassment charges potentially. This is escalating beyond local cops. Exactly. Interstate surveillance with financial records is federal territory. The FBI takes this seriously, especially with documented evidence. OP should have already been handed off to federal agents given what she found. This isn't going to stay local. That's where this hits next, actually. OP came back days later with an update. They found tracking data going back 2 years, and I'm not coping. I knew I had to face her. I waited until I saw her outside again, then went out there with my phone recording. I asked her directly why she was always watching my house. At first she denied it, but I showed her the timeline from my doorbell footage. That's when she broke down completely. She confessed everything. Her ex had approached her 6 weeks ago and paid her $200 a week to watch my comings and goings, document my schedule, report back to him. She said she needed the money, was desperate, and didn't think it would hurt anyone. I felt sick, but I kept asking questions. That's when she said something that made my blood go cold. She wasn't the only one. Turns out her ex didn't hire just one person. He hired at least 2 other neighbors from different angles of the property, different times, different coverage zones. She was the morning and afternoon person. Another neighbor covered evenings. A third was positioned to monitor the rear entrance. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was a coordinated, professional surveillance operation. My ex had created a multi-angle watch on my entire routine, and she kept going. The realization hit different when you understand it's not one person watching, it's a network. I've never been more terrified reading a post. The premeditation here is the scariest part. He planned this, for weeks, with multiple people. That's psychopath behavior. I've never been more terrified reading a post. The premeditation here is the scariest part. He planned this, for weeks, with multiple people. That's psychopath behavior. With the footage and timeline in hand, OP went straight to the police. What unfolded over the next few days shook her to her core. They found tracking data going back 2 years, and I'm not coping. When I filed the report, I brought everything. The doorbell footage, the timeline, the pictures I'd taken of her in different positions outside my house. The detective was thorough. Within days, they had payment records from a transfer app, multiple transfers of $200 every week for almost 3 months. But here's where it gets bad. They pulled financial records and cross-referenced them with my ex. The payment trail led directly to him. He'd been paying my neighbor the entire time. But he wasn't the only one. The detective found evidence that he'd hired at least 2 other people to watch different entrances, different times. This wasn't a jealous thing. This was a full surveillance operation. They got a restraining order signed the same day. My ex is facing charges. But the worst part came when they analyzed her phone and found tracking software installed on my doorbell camera system itself. The detective showed me the logs. 2 years. 2 full years of data. Every time I came and went, every visitor, every package, every single moment of my routine cataloged and stored. When he showed me that, I broke. I'm not sleeping. I check my locks 50 times a night. I had a security system installed. I thought knowing would make me feel safer. It didn't. It made everything worse. Comments on this one hit different. Your doorbell camera is the only reason you caught this. I'm buying one today. People are insane and we need surveillance on our own homes to prove it. And that's the weight of it. Intimate safety violated by someone you trusted, turned into data, sold as a subscription. On to the next one. My dog wouldn't stop growling at the hallway closet every night. When I finally looked inside, I found something that made me move out immediately. 28-year-old female. Sometimes animals know first. They sense what we're too comfortable to see. This is about a woman, her dog, and the moment she realized he wasn't barking at shadows, he was protecting her from someone in the dark. I'm still shaking. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. 4 years ago, I got Scout, golden mix. He barely barks. 3 weeks ago, Scout started growling at the hallway closet every single night. Not scared, not playful. Deep, protective warning kind. At first I thought mice or pipes. Older buildings make weird noises. Every night around 2 a.m., Scout would position himself in front of that closet door, growling low and steady for 10 minutes to an hour. I'd try to coax him away, but he refused to move. I called the landlord. He never sent anyone. I bought traps. I downloaded a decibel meter app. Nothing. So I did what we do when something feels wrong and we're scared. I ignored it. Then Tuesday night came. I finally opened the closet door. I'd been avoiding that for weeks, which now makes me feel sick. It's pitch black in there. Light switch is broken. I grabbed my phone flashlight and looked inside. Footprints, clear as day in the dust, leading from the back deeper into the darkness. Fresh footprints, multiple sets, different sizes. My heart stopped. Scout wasn't protecting me from an animal. He was trying to protect me from a person. She realized in that moment what Scout had known all along. They'd been living with a stranger in their walls. And the question that froze her blood, how many nights had it been? Realizing what she'd found, OP had to know more. There was no way she could just close that closet door and pretend this wasn't happening. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, took a deep breath, and forced herself to look deeper into the darkness. Whatever was waiting in there would change everything. I pulled on a pair of gloves and grabbed my phone, shaking as I stepped into the closet. The flashlight caught the crawlspace entrance, maybe 2 feet wide, just tall enough to crouch through. Everything was coated in thick dust, undisturbed for years, until it wasn't. 3 feet in, the dust thinned. Footprints. Large, deliberate footprints pressed into what little dust remained. I followed them deeper, my breath catching. The crawl space opened up, connecting to the adjacent unit next to mine. That's when my stomach dropped. The footprints weren't old. They weren't faded. The edges were crisp. Recent. Days recent, maybe. Someone had been moving through these walls between my apartment and the next one. How many nights? How many times while I was sleeping? I traced the path with my phone light. The footprints went right up to a spot directly behind my bedroom wall. They stopped there like someone had been standing, waiting, pressed against the wall between us. I got out. I don't remember crawling backward, just that I was suddenly back in my closet, gasping, my phone dropping from my hands. OP wasn't just looking at a break-in anymore. She was looking at a pattern, at evidence of intention. Someone had been inside her walls. Someone had been studying her, learning her space, her routine. And now she needed to know how recently. She needed to know if they were still using that passage. I called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher kept asking me to repeat myself, like she was making sure she understood what I was saying. I know how insane it sounds when you say it out loud. A hidden passage. A crawl space someone was using to access my apartment while I slept. I walked the dispatcher through everything. The footprints in the dust, how the passage connected, the fresh marks showing recent use. She kept asking if I was in immediate danger. I couldn't answer because I didn't know. That pause must have triggered protocol because cars arrived in 5 minutes. The police were meticulous. They photographed every inch, traced the full passage from my closet to the adjacent unit, confirmed the connection. One officer kept muttering, "Unbelievable," while another was on his radio calling for backup to search the neighboring apartment. They treated it like a crime scene, because it was. But here's what shattered me. Sitting in my living room watching them work, I couldn't stop replaying nights I almost didn't listen to Scout. Times I told him to shut up. Times I almost let him sleep instead of investigating his warnings. He'd been standing between me and someone with access to my bedroom while I was unconscious. I kept shaking, not from fear anymore, but from understanding how close I'd come to ignoring the only thing protecting me. Scout literally saved your life. That half-drilled hole into your bedroom wasn't a coincidence. They were planning surveillance or forced entry. Your dog was the only early warning system you had. Never doubt him again. Has the police told you anything about identifying who was using that passage? The silence between now and the discovery feels intentional, like they already know and are building a case quietly. Nothing concrete, just we're working on identification. But here's what makes it worse. My landlord mentioned a maintenance contractor accessed the adjacent unit about a month ago and then left. That's exactly when Scout started alerting. The timeline is too perfect to be coincidence. The police seemed frustrated with my landlord during their interview. Either he wasn't truthful about the contractor, or they already suspect him of negligence. I don't know which is worse. Comments hit hard, and suddenly who and why became everything. OP came back with the police report. What they found inside that wall cavity explained everything Scout had been warning about. I know who is using the crawl space. It's someone I see regularly, and I'm terrified. They found a sleeping bag, water bottles, a portable toilet, supplies for an extended stay. The half-drilled hole in my bedroom wall was positioned directly at bed height, aligned with my pillow. This was calculated. They had studied my apartment, my exact routines. In the neighboring closet, they found notebooks with sketches of my layout, my daily schedule mapped out day by day, handwritten notes about when I worked, when I came home, when the lights went out. They were preparing something. The police said the supply cache showed this wasn't temporary. Forensics traced the activity to within the last 2 weeks, the exact time Scout started his nightly warnings. My dog had been detecting a human predator moving through my walls before I even knew what was happening. This wasn't a random intruder. Someone had been methodically studying her, learning her patterns, preparing something worse. The sleeping bag and supplies mean this wasn't random. This was premeditated reconnaissance with a plan to escalate. The incomplete drilling suggests either you interrupted them or something spooked them. Either way, they were studying your space. The landlord knowing about a maintenance contractor who left right when this started is the real red flag. He either knew about the passage or he's covering for someone. Get a lawyer before you talk to him again. The fact that he won't let her out of the lease early tells you everything. A landlord who is truly just negligent would be desperate to help her leave to avoid a lawsuit. His refusal to cooperate is basically him admitting he's got liability he wants to hide. OP didn't hesitate. Within days, she had packed what she could and moved out. The apartment was no longer home. It was a crime scene where someone else had written her into their twisted story while she slept. 6 months went by. Nothing came of it. Here's how this actually ends. The police investigation went absolutely nowhere. They interviewed my landlord once, who denied any knowledge of a crawlspace, claimed it was probably some forgotten contractor job from decades ago. He wouldn't cooperate beyond that initial conversation. Eventually, the case got shelved. No suspects identified, no leads that panned out, no updates in months. My landlord refused to break my lease early despite the police investigation and the sealed case file. He said I was welcome to stay, but wouldn't take responsibility for a security breach or discuss renovations. I moved into my mother's spare room. I haven't been back to that apartment since the night we left with Scout in a suitcase. I can't go back. I can't sleep in a bed knowing someone spent weeks living inside my walls while I was unconscious. Scout knew the whole time. He tried to warn me every single night, and I almost dismissed him. I almost said it was nothing. I almost went back to bed. That's what stays with me. One more night of ignoring a good dog's warnings, and maybe I never would have found anything until it was far too late. This is the horror that settles in when you read it. Scout was the only thing between her and someone she never saw coming, and she almost didn't listen to him. Your dog put himself between you and an actual predator for an entire month by refusing to stop warning you. Scout doesn't deserve just good treats. He deserves a statue. This genuinely made my blood run cold. One more night of dismissing her dog, and her story could have ended in a completely different way. That is the last story for today.